Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Archon Studio have recently released the Wave 6 expansions for their rather excellent Masters of the Universe Battleground game. This wave comprises 2 character packs. We have already looked at the new Fighting Foemen pack on the channel, so today we are looking at the new Evil Horde expansion comprising Leech and Scorpia. This is the first expansion for the Evil Horde, and I am very happy to see Leech making an appearance. Unfortunately, Archon Studio have modelled him more on the action figure from the Classics range, and I'm not that keen on the design of his head in that particular range. Also, I would have rather Mantenna had featured as the second character rather than Scorpia, which is a character I don't really care about. Nevertheless, what I would prefer doesn't really amount to a hill of beans, and this is what we get. In addition to the characters, there is one Mud Monster miniature, which is a new type of terrain, and then you get 17 game cards, so there's quite a lot of new options here for team building. As usual, the miniatures are all on one sprue, and these ones are cast in red, the same as the rest of the Evil Horde. Leech is in 5 pieces including the base, Scorpia is in 6 pieces including the base, and the Mud Monster is in just 3. The detailing looks good, and I don't see a lot of obvious mould lines. I do wish Leech was a bit chunkier and a little scarier, but it's okay. Scorpia looks very lithe and agile, which is in keeping with her fighting style. The Mud Monster doesn't really look like mud to me. Is this supposed to be an interpretation of the Rock Monster from the Fright Zone playset? I'm actually not sure. Let's move on to look at Leech's unit card, which has some ghastly artwork on the front. Leech costs 16 points, which puts him at the same cost as Shadow Weaver, with only Hordak himself costing more points. He has 5 wounds, toughness 2, mind 2, power 2, perception 4, strength 4 and a speed of 5 or 8 when focused. His first special ability is Power Drain, which is a passive ability that triggers when an enemy within 12 inches loses or uses a mana. Leech immediately gains a mana. That's a fantastic ability because it's really going to force enemies to consider carefully if they want to use those mana tokens. His second ability is Stuck to the Wall, which costs 1 mana and lets him move over a portion of an adjacent high obstacle. Spending 1 mana to achieve something that normally costs 6 movement points is also very good. If we look at the reverse of the card, we have a much better piece of artwork for Leech, and we can see he's a very versatile fighter, with equipment slots for melee, ranged, armour, shield and trinket. Unlike most characters who take a weapon as their basic equipment, Leech has slug armour, which costs 3 points but is well worth the investment. It grants Leech +1 toughness and +1 mind for every 2 mana points he has. Normally a character can hold up to 5 mana points, which is going to be +2 to his stats. However, each time Leech makes a defense test, he loses 1 mana. That would be bad if it wasn't for his Power Drain ability, which should be able to keep his stats topped up. Give him an ability that lets him hold even more mana than normal, and Leech is going to be able to go toe to toe with the strongest enemies. Next up is Scorpia, who costs 14 points. Her stats are Wounds 4, Toughness 3, Mind 2, Power 2, Perception 3, Strength 4, and a speed of 5 or 8 when focused. Her abilities are geared around working with Horde Troopers and Horde Wraiths. Hunter Instinct costs 1 mana and lets her make a free move action towards an endless Horde ally within 12 inches. Better yet, that movement cannot be interrupted. Living Shield lets her redirect attacks that target her to an adjacent endless Horde ally, and that action is completely free. As you might expect, she isn't a character you can load up with armour. She has 1 melee weapon slot, 1 range slot and 3 trinket slots. Her basic equipment is Scorpia's Tail, which costs 2 points. After attacking, she can spend 1 mana to allow an endless Horde ally to interrupt the attacked enemy, and while her attack can only cause a maximum of 1 wound, it also curses the target. This expansion comes with 5 new weapon options. We have 1 melee weapon, Cursed Axe, which costs 3 points. It can do decent damage, inflicting up to 3 wounds, and it has a really interesting ability that reduces the number of actions necessary to attack with by 1 if the user has a curse debuff. Next is the Dragonfly Crossbow. Ah, memories. It costs 2 points, and it's a decent option with a range of 12 inches and a +1 modifier to the attack. It has the potential to push the target, and if the target is engaged then the scope of the attack is increased rather than decreased, making it an excellent option if you have some frontline troops who might need ranged support from snipers. Then we have another ranged weapon, the Net, which costs 2 points. It has a range of 8 inches, adds 1 to the number of dice for the attack, and during an interruption, attacks with the net don't have a penalty to the scope and cost 1 less action. The net itself doesn't cause any damage, but it can inflict the cripple debuff and sap 2 mana points, making it harder for the target to complete their intended actions. This is a really good weapon for Leech, who will gain mana if the net takes it away from the target. There are also 2 spells. Trick costs just 1 point, has a range of 16 inches and adds 1 dice to the attack. It can be used on an ally or enemy and requires the caster to discard a fate card. On a success, the target immediately interrupts with 0 AP, but gains the bonus from the discarded fate card. The caster then draws a new fate card. The last spell is Magic Push, which costs 3 points. It has a range of 12 inches and a -1 modifier on the number of dice rolled. If the user casts a different magic spell and gets 2 or more successes, they can then use Magic Push for a free attack against the same target. On a success, the target is pushed 2 spaces. So this is a pretty expensive spell to add to a character, but if you're going to be doing a lot of spell slinging, it's going to really help with crowd control and forcing enemies away from objectives. Next up, there are 4 trinkets. Skull costs -1 point, so you actually gain a point by adding it to your force. And I had to read the card a few times before I could get my head around it. Normally, characters are allowed to hold up to 5 mana tokens, but the skull says to reduce the maximum by 3. I can't tell if this reduction should only apply to the character with the skull, as the wording seems to imply the reduction is applied to all characters. The second trinket is the Amulet of Cool Attacks, which costs 1 point. The user chooses an ally within 12 inches, spends 1 mana, and transfers 1 buff and 1 debuff from that ally to them. The Buzzsaw is a disposable item that costs 3 points. When discarded, you gain 4 successes on any test, but cannot roll any dice. Finally, there is the Mud Monster, which costs 4 points and lets you place a Mud Monster within 12 inches. Characters adjacent to the Mud Monster cannot move, and characters moving adjacent to the Mud Monster must immediately end their move action. To escape, the Mud Monster, which has 1 wound, 0 toughness and 0 mind, must be destroyed. That could be helpful for slowing down enemy forces while you claim an objective. The 3 new fate cards in this pack are well suited to the Evil Horde. One lets you discard a fate card to gain a protection, quickness or enhancement buff. Remember, a core mechanism for the Horde is discarding fate cards for additional benefits. Another fate card lets you remove a debuff from any character, and the last fate card grants 1 action and 1 mana to any character with an endless ability. The last card in the pack is a Glory card, which grants you 20 victory points if a character with an endless ability knocks out an enemy. This might take a bit of work to set up, but I can see Horde Wraiths being able to pull it off. And that's it. Overall, the expansion is very much in line with the previous offerings. New characters and new equipment for even more team building options. The new characters seem useful, as do the new equipment cards. I'm still not sure about that skull trinket, and the Mud Monster might be a little overpriced at 4 points, but these unboxings are really only my initial thoughts. Sometimes the true worth of a card doesn't become apparent until you really drill into the potential combinations and tactics. And so, in summary, I think it's a good pack overall, and well worth the £12 I spent on it. And I think I will leave it there, other than to take a quick look at the miniatures assembled. Leech went together really well, and I have to say, now I have him assembled in hand, I do like him a little more. He has a strong, intimidating pose, and he is bulkier than I first thought for. I can't see myself running Evil Horde teams often, but I reckon Leech would find a place on any team I would put together. Scorpia was trickier. She is very thin, and I felt the pieces didn't meet up quite so well. There were a few more obvious lines, and I wasn't that happy with the way the right arm connected. But when she's all together, she looks fine. Not a character I'm in any hurry to paint though. And then we have the Mud Monster. What a cute little fella. He was only in 3 pieces and went together really well. It's a fun little piece. And that really is all I have to say about that. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.